Because I remember it. Woody went on to say, I threw the script away here. I mean, who was going to believe that crazy idea, being forced to do drugs? I do that voluntarily all day long, he said. So SNL, paid propaganda, can't do anything, can't say anything. They're the ones that unleashed Woody Harrelson out there to talk to you about the COVID vaccine. He was dead right. All the way back in 2019, he was dead right about that mentality. For sure he was. There's no debating it now. It's over. Even the people who were all in, once you started to ignore it, hey, look at that, right? It's over. He was right back in 2019. He was right, and he said it where in SNL? And now Shane Gillis. These are the two most talked about episodes I can remember outside of Alec Baldwin playing Trump, which makes sense too. So if you're Lorne Michaels, aren't you sitting around going, I got some changes to make to this writer's room? I got some changes to make to this staff. I got some changes to make about who comes and hosts here. I got some changes to make about the musical acts we get in here. For sure that's going to happen. Absolutely it's going to happen. By the way, as Shane Gillis is bringing the word gay back, if we're not allowed to use that as the slur, let's just change it. Dude, don't be trans, man.
It's cool when you get up and you feel instantly connected to the world.
The Stan Sperry Show.
I don't know what it is. I got him on every morning.
On Rock 106.9.
About an hour from right now, we'll get you into Primus at Coheed and Cambria. That show's August 5th. Blossom. I'll have tickets for you all week. I'm going to cheat today and play Primus, but featuring Ozzy. So we'll do that. I gotta admit, man, Primus is one of those bands I respect more than I like, you know? And there's a lot of those. I've seen them a handful of times. It's one of the best things about being in this industry, that you can kind of go, even if you're just a casual, be like, yeah, all right, yeah, you know what, let's go to that. Now, I saw them before I got in the business, too, but, Lollapalooza, I think, back in the day, something like that. They're great, but they're a little weird for me. I get why people like them. It's not necessarily my favorite thing, Primus, but they're one of those bands where it's like, I like them more at the show. Jimmy Buffett, not that they're similar musically, but I like them more at the show than I do in the car, right? There's a little bit of that. Bob Marley, right? Like, I don't really like reggae. You take me to a festival, I got beers in my hand, we're walking around, hit this J, all right, people are kind of enjoying it, this and that, you could get into it, right? Environment will matter. I guess that's what I'm trying to say there about Primus. Environment will matter. You know, we were talking about environments earlier, as a matter of fact, because I was admitting that I got wrapped up into not a new sport for the world, but new for me, sort of. I've watched the World Cup in years past and that kind of stuff, and I, try to get into it. But I found myself all in on football over the weekend, and I'm in, like all in. I watched, I think it was 3 Premier League games, 2 Bundesliga games, which is another league, and then I watched MLS. I think it was LA and Seattle. That game was on Fox over the weekend, so I watched that one too. It was like 5-6 games I watched over the weekend. Soccer, football, however you want to say it. And I was talking about the environment of that pulls you in, the crowds at those games are insane. They're impassioned, and, they have like chants and phrases that kind of go with it. And it kind of helps pull you in. I feel like home field or home pitch advantage in that sport may be more valuable today than some other home field or home courts advantages and the like. And it hit me how crazy sports fans are while I was watching one of those games. So I full on admitted, right? Historically, I'm not a big fan. It seems I've been bitten by the bug of it, and now a lot of times this stuff will happen with me where it's like I get kind of hot on something and it's really not my thing. So a couple of weeks later, I kind of put it down, i.e. the comic books I was reading. But we'll see, right? We'll see. So right now, I'm into the soccer thing, and this is how crazy sports fans really are. So I'm watching this game. It was Arsenal versus Newcastle, right? And so I'm on the couch. I'm kind of watching it. We got the mimosas going. We got all kind of stuff going. And so I'm all in. And they're on the attack. Team's on the attack. They're coming down. And a guy goes to make a kick to try to score a goal. But his teammate right to the left of him was wide open. and I mean wide open. He was about to take a contested shot. I, having watched about 36 minutes of the sport in my life, was like, are you an idiot? You got to make that extra pass. What are you doing? You could have scored. Like, again, 36 minutes history of this game, and I'm telling a 10-year vet he's not doing his job right. It is one of those things that it's not just sports. People do it to me all the time, and we do it with other people's positions. I literally had to tell a guy, I don't want to call him a kid, a guy, Jamie, last week, and about 11 different messages back and forth about the radio business. And I was being polite for the first half of them, and I'm like, dude, we're getting to the point where it's disrespectful now. You don't know more about this than I do. You don't know more. Just like if I came to where you work and I was like, I know more about this than you, you would look at me like I was an idiot, right? But we've done that. I think it's reality television that's kind of done that, like the bar rescueization of the country. Well, I know how to run the bar. John Taffer says, shut the business down, kick all of your customers out, raise your prices by $5 a piece, and then go dragoon the 4 people in your city who have money. Like, John Taffer would close 90% of bars in Canton. Like, if you took his advice, you would close for the remainder of your life. You were not going to make it that way. His system can work for depending on your location. But, like, the bar rescueization of the country, like, we've seen a little bit. We got a little bit of this. Behind the ropes, this. You've seen, you know, a reality show on this player. And all of a sudden, we just believe that we know so much more than we do. Like, I said it. I was standing up. I was like, you got to make that pass there. And I just started to laugh hysterically at myself. I was like, I have no idea what the hell it is I'm talking about. Like, no clue. I think he may have been better making that pass there, but I don't know. Like, I don't know. It was pretty wild. I'll tell you another sports event that happened over the weekend that was amazing. It was last week you had the Daytona 500, right? And that did not end all that well. Now, yes, I bet 2 drivers that didn't win it. We'll see how my bets for the Cup Series champion. I have a Logano ticket and I have a Kyle Busch ticket. We'll see how I do with those. But last week, at the Daytona 500, like the race finished going like 35 miles per hour. It felt very anticlimactic, and it did not feel like racing. And then all week it was like, the problem with NASCAR is blah, 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 up and down, everywhere. Everybody telling you what the problem in NASCAR. But then you get to Atlanta yesterday. And Suarez, Blaney, and Kyle Busch, literally a photo finish. Nose to nose to nose coming down that stretch for that checkered flag. It was amazing. You can't ask for more than that on TV. Did they rig it for the photo finish? NASCAR knew after the 500, man. They were on to us after the 500. They were on to us. So now they got to... Right? Like that, those people are so damn annoying. But if you're a NASCAR person, it's not your guy maybe coming across the line. Okay, fair. You would have rather had Cindric or, somebody else. Okay, fine. I can get that. But if you're a fan of the sport, a lot of people don't want to call NASCAR a sport. Are you kidding me? When I can drive home on 77 without seeing an accident, then I'll stop calling NASCAR a sport. Those guys are doing 190 miles per hour, 3 inches apart for 3.5 hours. You won't use your turn signal on the way home today. Quit telling me, dude, that's not a sport. It's a sport. It's impressive. It's impressive. Sports are physical. Really? Go Google how much weight a typical NASCAR or race driver loses during the race and tell me it's not physical. It just doesn't look like the other sport that you like, right? But if you're a sports fan, like he even said, like I'm a NASCAR casual, at best casual. And when I was watching that yesterday, I was like, you can't take your eyes off of this. Look at this. Because I like F1 racing, but so many times in F1, once the guy's out in front, it's over. It's like, all right, so Verstappen wins again. He's 7 seconds ahead of the second guy. There's no coming back from this. NASCAR at least has found a way a little bit. We can get into the stage racing conversations. We could get into a lot of that down the road. But they at least in this race, found a way to where it's like, you got to keep your eyes on this, man, because you just don't know what's going to happen. And that finish yesterday at Atlanta, I thought was awesome. I was all in. I could not get any more of that yesterday. I thought it ended great. We are going to talk to Scott from winningfornextyear.com. We'll talk to him about the NFL salary cap. Talk to him about the Cavaliers. Yeah, get out to spring training with the Guardians as well. We'll sit down with Scott. We'll do that next on Rock 106.9.
And you know what that conniving trickery is called?
The Stansberry Show. on Rock 106.9.
By the end of this hour, I'll get you into Primus and Coheed and Cambria. That show is August 5th. Blossom. I'll have tickets for you all week. 8:45 this morning is when you get your set for today. Every Monday at 8, we talk to my buddy, the co-founder of waitingfornextyear.com. His name is Scott, and you can find him on the X platform at WFNY Scott. How are you this morning, my man?
Doing well, man. Another weekend in the books. I'm ready to get the week kicked off here. How about you?
I'm doing great, man. I actually want to start out there in spring training. There's a lot of Guardians fans who kind of feel like this is bite down on the rope season, right? Like you're going to see a major pullback from last year. You got a first-time manager. There's not a lot of vets on the team. There's some youth there, and a lot of people feel like you're going to see it go off the rails. What are you seeing out of spring training? Are you hopeful, or are you a little bit more braced for get ready? We're in for a long one this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of touched on it a little bit last week, but it comes down to your expectations. Yeah. If you're expecting this team to be competing for World Series this year, I think you're setting yourself up for a very long summer. If you're going into it thinking, okay, we have a perennial MVP candidate at third base. We have I would say perennial all-star. I know he had a slow start last year, but really good second baseman. We have the Naylor brothers are fun to root for, and they have the arms, right? Like that. So if you use that as like the base case, and then if any of these young guys, when they eventually get called up, it'll be a minute because the team refuses to pay these kids, so they wait till June to bring them to the big leagues. But when that happens, if they can see what they have in some of them and see what some of these trades have netted over the last several years, I think that could be fun. But I mean, I think anything if you want them to be competitive because the division is still hot garbage. But that said, it's not. They're closer to the bottom of the AL, I think, this season than the top. But they could surprise some folks, which I guess is good. Like I said last week, they're gonna try hard. They're gonna play hard. They're I think all of the stuff that we love seeing in Cleveland from a baseball team. But they were dead last in the majors last year in home runs. And if you're going to be dead last in home runs, you got to find some other ways to score. And I just don't know if there's going to be a lot of that this summer. So excited for the kids, but I do think it's going to be a tough year from a record standpoint.
Talking to Scott from waitingfornextyear.com, the amount of times in history where people like you and I have kind of written a team off a little bit and then have that team come out of nowhere and play great, it has happened a million times. And actually, we have another team in the area it's kind of true of. I mean, at the start of this NBA season, most people were writing the Cavs off. A lot of people were anyway. I shouldn't maybe say most, but a lot of people were. And then they kind of got out to a slow start, and people went, oh no, here we go, it's kind of over. I mean, there were people who were ready to give up on Evan Mobley. There were people who were like, well, we might have to move Jared Allen. Like, people were ready to tear down this roster already, and then all of a sudden, here comes the Cavaliers, and they're playing pretty damn good. And this is on top of having some injury issues all season long, for crying out loud. Now, they had a national TV game the other night against Philadelphia. They fell a little short of that. Donovan Mitchell didn't play there. Are the Cavs a real threat in the AFC, or not the AFC, I'm sorry, in the East?
Yeah, well, so I'm going to peel that back a second. Our lasting impression of these guys was getting their doors blown off by the Knicks in the playoffs.
Yes.
Right? So, and the roster was pretty much set. Obviously they added Strus, they added Yang, they had, Sam Merrill. But, so it was, I think a lot of fans rightfully were in the show me mode. Now, show me doesn't mean overreact to every game, which I think we tend to do. Evan Mobley is closer to a max extension than anything else, right? I mean, so we can't read too much into that. And then I do think JB spent a good chunk of the beginning of this season trying to figure out rotations and who can you have on and off the floor at the same group, they set out to do. And I think it's bearing a lot of fruit now. I wish the nationally televised games weren't on the road on the second night of a back-to-back, but that's sometimes the way the the cards are dealt, and they kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit with all the missed free throws, and I felt like every time I looked up, they were missing a layup, and so that was a winnable game. I was more frustrated with the loss to Orlando, to be honest. But that said, your initial question was, are they legit? And yes, I think they are. I had them third in the East coming into this season, so they're out kicking that a little bit. I do think Boston again is in a class of themselves, and then the next tier is really, Cleveland, Milwaukee if they can get things straight with Doc, and then Philly with Embiid is always going to be very, very tough. So that's going to be a wild card to see if he makes it back and looks like himself. But they're there. The trick is there's a lot of other younger teams in the conference too, looking to make a run. Indiana, for example. So they're a really good team. They've been number 1 or 2 in net rating for the last several months. But they are going to need to get maintain their health and then see who they end up drawing in the first round of the playoffs. I think will determine a lot of their overall success.
Talking to Scott from WinningForNextYear.com, and before I get into the NFL salary cap being raised and what that means for the Browns, Deshaun Watson, and the rest of the roster, Peter King's retiring, man, and you as a sports writer, I would imagine have a high amount of respect for Peter and everything he has given the sport of football, correct?
I do, and journalism's tough, and more often than not, your career ends before you want it to. With reductions and such, and so to be able to retire, I think speaks volumes for him and how long people have kept him around. Now, in today's age, I don't know how much readership he has. I mean, I think a lot of the folks like you and me who grew up with him certainly feel a lot differently about him than maybe somebody, maybe a little bit younger. But that said, as much as he's gotten torn up for some of his takes over the years, he's a legit journalist, legit reporter, and they don't grow on trees these days and don't get to stick around much with budgets and things like that. So kudos to him. I don't know if the NFL landscape changes much without him, but that said, he was a mainstay for a very long time in terms of NFL coverage.
Will he be a Hall of Famer as a media member?
I don't see how he isn't. That's always a they always have that one-off spot that they give every year. I see him getting in eventually. I don't know if it's quick, but he should be. I can't see any. If you're naming sort of a Mount Rushmore of NFL coverage, I mean, it's hard to not have Peter King on there. So it would be very surprising to not have him in Canton at some point.
That's kind of how I see it too. Peter. Years, but anytime I see him as a guest somewhere, it's like, all right, I want to watch that, right? He's just one of those guys. It's not that I think every take he's ever had has been great, but I'll take his average versus some other people's average. Talking to Scott from WinningForNextYear.com. And the NFL salary cap, buddy, is now going to be set, I believe, according to NFL.com, at $255.4 million per team for the 2024 season. So first question, is the NFL salary cap real? Because so many people are talking about, dude, this ain't real, man. They just kind of moved this number wherever they see fit. From what I read yesterday, it's a lot about redeeming some money back from, the COVID era and all of that. Is the salary cap a real thing, or is it just something we talk?
Well, it's a function of revenue, too. So thanks Taylor Swift for the Browns having a little more money to spend this year, right? I mean, that kind of stuff matters. And I know the bros online want to get all upset about it, but the more people watching this sport means the more money teams are going to get to spend on players. And now it goes up across the league, right? So it's not like just the Browns have more money, but it does put into perspective, when you have long-term deals, it's not always about that year one that matters in terms of percentage, because if they forecast correctly, David Griffin was a genius with this when he was building that Cavs team.
Yes, he was.
In terms of forecasting, future bumps in cap and being able to, say, hey, okay, yeah, signing Anderson Varejao out of this deal now may sound crazy, but 4 years from now, when the average player is making twice this, it's going to look like a steal, right? I mean, that's the kind of stuff that they, do when you trade for Amari Cooper 2 years ago. The contract's expensive, then. But fast forward to now, and it's a much smaller portion of the of their cap, and that trade looks more and more like a steal every day.
Yeah.
I do think it's going to be interesting.
You can't
obviously,
let go of Coop. You can't let him go.
Yeah. Well, no. I don't think that's. I don't think. I mean, if you would have asked me 2 years ago if he was going to be on the potential block, I would have said yes. But they need to add to that receiver room. They can't afford to
That's
have it.
what I think too. I think they're
Have it get it.
Anything that involves an Amari Cooper move, I'm all out on. I hate that idea. I think we absolutely stole him, and I think he and Deshaun are starting to build that thing a little bit. We just need Deshaun on the field a little bit more. So does the raising of this salary cap, Scott, does it prevent the problem? I kept making it about the Chiefs. You paid Mahomes the money. Next thing you know, you got Tyreek Hill, the Miami Dolphin, not the Kansas City Chief. Is this raising of the salary cap, are we going to prevent this now? Are we going to stop hearing about some big-name guys that might be on the move because of this, or are they still going to have to get very serious about some restructure?
A little bit of both. The quarterbacks still do a lot of money. You have a potential Hall of Fame running back coming off an ACL injury in the last year of his contract. You have some free agents that you're going to have to look into potentially keeping or replacing. So there's some moving that's going to have to happen. But now don't forget, Barry was ahead of this a little bit last year with some of the restructures and moving Petonio and Teller and some of these guys who had large deals, but restructuring to kind of defer to future years when they forecasted this sort of bump. So they have money. They obviously don't have as much as some other teams, but to your point about the salary cap being some sort of nebulous, thing, I foresee a lot of restructuring and just sort of gamesmanship with sort of the cap side of things to make it all work out. I know there's a lot of rumors, for lack of a better term, that people were getting all bent out of shape about with Nick Chubb potentially being cut. I don't see that happening. At least as of now. I mean, obviously his knee and his situation, I think he's more likely to retire than the team say, hey, we're not going to have you around anymore, right? So there's one of those situations where he's due a lot of money though, and if they think they can get another 2 or 3 years out of him, maybe you take that 16 mil that he's due and turn it into 25 over 3 years versus, there's a lot of things they can do, right? So to be determined, but again, as you get on it earlier, it all comes down to the QB, and if they can't pay this guy as much as they are without him being on the field and potentially leading them back to the playoffs. So we'll see what happens. But again, good chunk of the roster spots, as we talked about last week, are spoken for. It's just going to have to be around the periphery, and I do trust Barry and DePodesta and the rest of that front office to work the numbers to make it all happen.
Perfect. That's Scott from waitingfornextyear.com. You can find him at the site. You can find him on X at WFNY Scott next Monday, 8 o'clock right here on the Stansbury Show. Buddy, have a great week.
You too. Take care.
I always like to get his opinion, and I hope he ends up being right on that salary cap issue. Should let you know that Scott and I both will be guests tomorrow night on the Squad Pod, and I believe you can get that wherever your podcasts are downloadable. They have asked us to be on together as a unit, and he and I have both said yes to that. By the end of this hour, we'll get you into Primus and Coheed and Cambria on Rock 106.9.
He's a man of many talents, but he does not have the talent for keeping quiet.
The Stansbury Show on Rock 106.9.
9 a.m. this morning, let's find out what's more important, looks or personality. I did see this, and this is not new. As many things I will say in here all the time, it's like, this isn't a new problem. We had this. We already did this as a country. We already fought this out. Happens all the time. And I saw a woman went viral over the weekend over how she was raising her children. This is everybody's favorite thing when I do, because I don't have kids, right? So when I judge parents, or I'll get the back of a parent, you don't even know, man. You don't even know, man. Shouldn't even be able to have an opinion. Really? Because I find there's a couple of other conversations when people tell you you don't get to have your opinion. Man, do you freak out about it, right? And I always say, there's 8 billion people on the planet, and I have to live amongst them. I'll be having my opinion. Like, I'll be passing out my opinion no matter what it is. But a mom's now being roasted online because what she had the audacity to do is put a leash on her son's backpack, right? And so this just looks crazy because we don't do it all of the time. This isn't that looks, it's abnormal. And so the abnormal is, well, we're fearful of the unknown. And we will criticize what we are fearful of. It reminds me of that quote I was leaning on last week. Be curious, not judgmental. Right? And so a woman now is sitting back, she's like, look, my child runs faster than me. She's talking about her hysterectomy. She has trouble running sometimes. And the reason why she had to tell people that is because she's like, look, I religiously ran races and ran every day before my surgery. So it's not laziness. Because what did everybody say? Run after your kid. You're lazy. Run after your kid. You're lazy. As if none of you who have children have ever just seen your kid bolt away from you. Don't lie. I'm in the stores with you. I've been in public with you. They get away from you occasionally. Now her son's adopted, and she says he has more speed and energy than other children his age. Sometimes that will happen. Now, I will tell you that part of the reason I think this mom is being criticized is her and her husband have adopted this boy, and he happens to be a different race than them. I don't think it matters who's what and this and that. I don't think it matters, right? But I think they're being judged a little bit more harshly because of the optics of that. Versus, no, we care about this kid so much that we want to make sure safety is built into what it is we are doing. Quote, aside from his already rough beginning of medicine exposure, we know little to nothing about his biological family and their genetics. So he could be more hyper just from experiences that I don't know of. She said her son hated to be confined to strollers or car seats, and that added this seemed to be the best option to keep them both happy and safe, both her and him. So of course now people are on this one. You may remember, I think it was 2 years ago, where a guy, it was 2 years ago, a father of quintuplets was using a leash to take his 5 kids on a walk, and it looked like somebody walking their dogs, or a dog walker, right? And it does, it kind of looks like that. And of course there is the very easy, low-hanging fruit joke of way to treat your humans like they're animals. Right? You can let me know what you think about this, by the way, texting in at 330-450-7625. We'll see it that way. We'll run away from you. Why? Because animals are unpredictable. Okay. Let me just tell you, the children are unpredictable. Right? Like they're kind of unpredictable. You just don't know what the kids are going to do. Not my kids. My kids know. Sure they do. Sure they do, tough guy. Absolutely. Sure they do. Nobody escapes this. Nobody escapes the kid acting out. Nobody, just the other day, as a matter of fact, I was at the grocery store. And I got in my car and like across the lot, like right across from me, this guy was getting out of this car with these 2 little kids. And I stopped. And I didn't pull out of my parking space until I saw him get way past me and closer to the door. Because I have no idea. He was trying to like hold on to both of them, trying to do this and get the cart from the car corral and the thing. And he was going crazy. And I was like, don't pull out right now. First, don't make him feel like you don't care or that you're not paying attention and make the situation worse for him. Second, just take yourself out of the environment where something terrible can happen. Because there's nothing worse than losing a child. I had to watch a family member do it up close. It's awful. Heart-wrenching. There is no pain on that level. None. And so, why are we treating animals better than we're treating the humans? Right? If your dog attendance. Take the training wheels off, man. I'm ready to go. We don't need the... We saw fire. We went to the, the moon. We're explorers. That's what humans are. We're explorers. And so I understand, while looking at that, why some parents are like, I don't know about this. Now, most people base their opinion on anything out of personal experience.
1069.
Just a few minutes now. I'll give you that one. We'll get into some Primus stuff throughout the. Just call him Coheed. I understand why people don't like it. I don't have a problem with it. And as a matter of fact, maybe one day this week we'll remind everybody that Coheed did an amazing cover of Love Gun. Maybe we'll do that this week as well. What we had been doing is talking about a mom who's been dragged online now for her son was wearing a backpack with a leash attached to it. She says, look, man, this kid, he's got more energy than us. I had a hysterectomy. I got issues. And like, he just takes off. He's on the run. And so I got this leash now, and people are, of course, like, yelling at her. You'll hear people say things like this. Oh, look at what the white people are up to now, right? You'll hear a lot of that kind of stuff. I said, I think it looks abnormal because we don't do it, because it is abnormal. We don't do it often. And I think that's the only reason why it looks strange. I started running you through some scenarios of, things that could happen. And nothing is more valuable than your children. I mean, nothing, right? Most people would not sell their kids for money. Most. I got to stop at most because plenty of people have done it, right? I mean, look at the Kardashian host. Like, the mom literally sold her out for that cash, right? And so I don't think most people would do that, though. It's the most valuable thing in your life. As a matter of fact, so valuable, people are going to be like, don't call a kid a thing! Don't do it, monster! You don't have kids, that's why you said it. Awful. Right? Like, that's what's going to happen. You could lose anything else in your life today. Car, house, whatever. And once you're done crying for 10 minutes about it, what is everybody going to say? It'll be all right. It's just money. You just buy another one. It'll be all right. Insurance will cut you a check. Now, we know insurance companies don't pay this, but you take the point. When your kid dies, nobody knows what to tell you. Nothing. Watching that line of people walk up there and shake my brother's hand, he ended up consoling them. Like, nobody knows what to tell you because there is nothing to say. The stakes are raised at that point, right? Absolutely. Now, I'm surprised here as so many of you are telling me you're on this mom's side. Like Bill says here, we used the leash on our son. He would take off in a second. We ended up doing it for his safety and so we wouldn't lose him. Absolutely. Sean says, Stansbury, in a world full of kid snatchers, you'd almost be crazy to let them go too far from you without something to keep your hand on them. Sean's not wrong. And kid snatching, or maybe a neighbor who shouldn't be doing something to your children, all this stuff, people think all of this stuff is new. I'm not saying Sean does, but a lot of people think this stuff is new. It's not. You're hearing about it. It's always been this way. We just talk about the problems more, and so people are more aware. And then I would imagine what's happening here is through more awareness comes what? Change of behavior. And so I think more and more people are changing their behavior in this regard. This came in off the text line at 330-450-7625, where you can send a text this way. It says, what about the kid backpack that looks like a cool animal? Parents will use those at the zoo or an amusement park. She's not the first parent to be doing this. I'm 39 and have parents use this since I was a kid. Okay, well, I don't know. I've seen animal backpacks. I have not seen the one with the retractable cord. Her son, my better half son, is getting to the age where, like, a little bit more independence, kind of walking on his own. But when he was real little, like, we couldn't get homie out of the stroller. Like, he's a little prima donna-ish. He kind of liked having the shades on and, like, you push me around, right? Like, homie kind of liked the stroller. He was into it. And then after that, Dan Carey, and that meant pick him up and he wanted to be carried a little bit. And I love that. So I was doing it, right? And my niece is now in college. So, like, those are the kids in my life. And so I don't know of what you speak. I'm sure it's a thing. And yeah, it does kind of sound like that. I think it's just more and more people are going to be willing to use said things. You know what else this person said, which is an interesting point, and they're right about it, is this mom's going to get judged no matter what. You got the kid on the leash. Oh, my God, look at how bad parents